Welcome to the Hospitality Chat podcast. My name is Mehdi Rahman, and here is our host right here, Matthew Drummond-Poynter, Joanna Oliveira. Is that how you pronounce it, right?
Joanna Oliveira, but you were pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah, and Daniyal Khan, our editor as well. And
Hello.
we're looking into the importance of employee health. And I think in the times that we lived in, going through the entire COVID pandemic, the importance of health has been pushed into the front of the conversation for the whole of the pandemic. And that's something that is been in the mindset, not only your physical health, which is important, but also the mental health, that we had to endure in terms of being in isolation, in lockdown. And I thought maybe touching upon employee health, especially because, the key workers that took part in the relief effort to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, but also other services and other industries, including hospitality, having a hit as a result of the pandemics, if it's the cut of, the costs, like the cost cut, between different industries or whatnot. And I feel like employee health is something that should be considered to talk about. And I would like to hear what you guys think, why is it beneficial if any case?
It helps with the go on.
Right, yeah, I mean, employee health, of course, while obviously we like to think of it as something that you do for your employees because obviously ethics are very important, I think it's actually just a no-brainer on the practical front as well. So, for things like reducing absenteeism, for example, of course, when employees are unhealthy, they have to take a lot of sick days. So, in that frame, you're reducing the amount of times that your staff take sick days off, you're getting more out of your existing workforce, and also this absenteeism actually kind of plays forward not just on the physical health front, but also the mental health front. Employees are way more likely to not want to come into work, maybe call a sickie, so to speak, and not come in at all if their mental health is just so poor to the point where they just can't even imagine coming into work because they're just suffering that much. Things like depression, anxiety, for example, all of those can drive someone to not want to come into work, and as a result leave you kind of with almost like half a staff member in that respect.
I mean, looking after your employees is it's now need to be looked as more of a central requirement for your business, because it allows an effective and efficient working environment. Would you say, having everyone making sure everyone's in tip-top shape, make sure everyone's looked after, because sometimes something simple as saying how well everyone is doing and trying to connect with your team is such an important thing. That way it shows that you have your connection to your employees, you show that you care for them, and that's a way of having their back, in the sense, not only financially by paying them for the work that they've done, but also giving them the mental and physical gratification, in terms of if they're doing okay, if they're feeling all right.
I think
workforce.
Go. No, you go.
A positive workforce is also a great way to build up your the job satisfaction as well as morale throughout the whole workforce itself. Making like you said, keeping track of your employees' health, as well as making sure that they're all doing the work and happily doing it, as well as trying to maintain that bridge between that will also grab attention to other employees, as well as build up as a way to build up your brand and your business as well. Because if you have if your business is a way of trying to get your employees to be having that morale and trying to keep that positivity all around and keeping that and maintaining it, it'd be a great way to attract new talent to your business. Having happier employees, as well as the overall work output, will help bring about attention to your company without spending on marketing or recruitment costs. Just having that positivity around the workforce is a great way to do it. For example, being more confident with yourself, or be more talkative and trying to be more social with your employees and trying to get to know them. That's the best way to help build up your brand, and as well as help your employees to put forth their work and effort.
Yeah, I mean, our team, the I would call it the video production / digital marketing team, we've made these kind of like efforts ourselves, you know, trying to get to know each other a bit more better, which is, I mean, we want to lead by example as well. Like we definitely had that kind of thing going on yesterday, which is nice. Like it's a way of opening up to everyone. And that way it's like, I feel like this is very common as well. Like people say they're not happy with work. They just like, why? I feel like work should be also, when you're earning, you know, the way you're earning, you should feel like also to enjoy your work. Because I feel like for me, I don't want to do things that I'm not comfortable. I'm talking about in a personal way as well. Like I rather do things that I enjoy doing, and then working, I want to enjoy doing the work that I'm doing as well. So I think, you know, kind of looking after your mental health, I think the mental health side of it was something that was sometimes, a lot of the times, has been overlooked, but I feel like now it's gaining more and more attention, because considering, you know, being in lockdown isolation, and as well as, you know, dealing with everyone has their own struggles and demons and whatnot, and I feel like it's something that to be keeping in mind. I feel like it's something more important for others to try to, you know, handle together, as well as not to leave anyone behind, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to know, is the fact that mental health wasn't a big thing before COVID and pandemic happened. So even when it was happening, I have a personal experience where I was put in the bar upstairs, and I had like, I think it was a party of people, and one of the people that was working with me left. So I had about 15 people asking me for drinks, and I started to panic. And I went downstairs, I went to my manager, I was like, listen, I think I'm having a panic attack. Because at that point we had to wear masks, so I couldn't breathe properly, and it was really hot because there was a lot of people. So I went downstairs, I was like, look, I'm having a panic attack. She actually understood, because she had her mental health in the past, so she knew what I was going through. She just told me to go outside and have some hair and like breathe it out, and like then she told me not to go back upstairs. I stayed downstairs for the rest of the night. But there's some employers that don't care. They just want you to do the work, and that's it. So for her to be like, you know what, I get it, go outside for like 10 minutes, take a breather, and then she came back outside and asked me if I was okay and whatever. But I've had people that would happen to me and they wouldn't care. They would put me in situations where I felt uncomfortable. Me and you, for example, because you were a bartender too. We
Yeah.
had to be like waitresses and have like 5 to 10 drinks in the, oh, what you call it, the black thing where you put drinks.
Trays, like trays.
Yeah, the
and whatnot, like,
trays.
yeah, it's trays.
And the customers would take one out, and you will unbalance it, so everything would
Yeah.
fall, and then it would be your fault because you're the one
Exactly.
carrying the drinks, and people just harass you if a football game is playing and you're going through the screen. So that's a lot that we deal with, that some employers don't care because they just want you to do the work. So
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think
yeah. Sorry.
no, it's fine. I think that employees' health, especially mental health, obviously physical health is very important, but I think mental health is still very looked like as not a thing. People don't actually think you have depression and anxiety, PTSD, and whatever else you may have, because you can't see it. It's not something you see. So people might think you're just doing that just to get off work but still get paid, which 90% of the time doesn't happen. We're actually dealing with a lot of things, but a lot of employers don't care, which sucks.
Yeah,
It really does suck.
I mean, when I worked also like in hospitality, I work in like event staffing as well, and we had to work as like, I help as a bar back, you know, like helping the bartenders doing their shifts and whatnot. Sometimes I have to be helping with them with the drinks, and as well as working as a waiter, and you know, working in like drinks and canapé services where I have to serve people food. Sometimes you encounter a lot of people who, there are a lot of people very nice to the events, and I appreciate it. And the customer interaction is a very, you know, the good interactions you have with your customers are good, and in fact it's very nice. They help uplift you to enjoy the work that you're doing. Very like helps you really enjoy the work you're doing. But then there's the customers that get rowdy, drunk, or rude, and there's situations where I think I talked about, as well as conflict. I talked about this, I think, with other people, about having training for conflict resolutions, you know, how to resolve a conflict that easily, because stuff like this, you know, where a customer could get physical or emotionally abusive to a worker in case, or like a staff member, in case things go wrong. Like if I probably interacted with customers who were very rude, and a bit too drunk for their liking. And there has to be, obviously there'll have to be a cut-off limit, but also when it gets too nasty, get too rude. And we all trying our best to make sure they enjoy the service that we're doing, but then it comes to the time where they get so rude and nasty. But then I feel like
I think
sometimes
it's just they cross the line between
yeah,
them having fun and starting harassing us because we
yeah.
gave them a cutoff point.
Mhm.
I've had people where we had to cut them off and they would shout at us, and then the managers would come and they would shout at the managers and like, listen, you are too drunk, you're already
Yeah.
shouting at us, and your shouting is like upsetting the other customers, so you have to leave. And it would just get worse. So I think there's a line they cross
Mhm.
where you just being drunk and shouting. Like I've had people like singing really loud and whatever, but they're just having fun in their own table, whatever, that's fine. To you're shouting at the staff and saying you don't want to leave and you don't want us to cut off your
Yeah.
drinking. And then they go to other bars, so we have to warn the other bars saying, this person just left, they're probably going to come to you, and it just becomes a whole hassle for everyone around, which sucks. That's the reason why when I go out, I tend to be really nice to the bartenders and waitresses, because I was one for 2 years, so I know how they feel. So if you can be a nice person to them, you just make the whole day,
Yeah.
because you have no idea what they're dealing with.
I mean, from working in like as an employee for these kind of events where it can get so physically and also socially demanding, you get that appreciation as well from from an employee perspective about mental health and physical health. When you see other staff members, like when you visiting a restaurant as a guest yourself, you get that appreciation as well. And if you manage employee health more better, it also has an outside social kind of effect where employees who worked in hospitality will have that norm in them where anytime they go to like a social event or going into a restaurant or any place that provides hospitality, we trying to make sure that we let them know. The staff, I do it as well, where like I make sure that the staff done a very good job and I'm really always happy with the service, because like working in hospitality is probably one of the most socially demanding but also very rewarding jobs. But it's you want to make sure that you have, it's like, how to say it, I want to make sure I have their back.
It's like a double-edged sword. Sword. Like you get a lot of accomplishments, but it's so draining that you don't know if you want to stay or not. It's like when we work as bartenders and waitresses and then you're a guest, it's like we know how to behave, quote unquote behave, because we've been there. We know how bad it can be or how good it can be, so we just tend to stay in our best behavior. Even if you're drunk, you have that thing in your head like, I have to be like not make that much noise, I have to be careful not to break anything because I know then they have to clean it. So it's like we know how to behave instead of just being crazy and just starting to break things and just start bar fights and whatever.
I mean, for us as well, not only looking at the Health and Safety Work Acts code, employee health is covered under that guide, I think. Wouldn't you say, Matthew, like the Health and Safety Code?
Yeah, I mean, Health and Safety Code, as far as I'm aware, has a pretty wide array of things that employers actually have to put down in their workplace to ensure that their employees are safe, be they just temporary contractors, people you've just hired for like a short period of time, all the way to full-time staff. You've got to have like a relatively safe workplace. Unfortunately, I believe a lot of these right now don't necessarily acquire in regards to mental health stuff, but on the converse, if a story comes out about your workplace being a horrific place to like work for your staff, they've got mental health problems all over the place as a result of the kind of toxic work environment you might be fostering, then that will eventually become public, because employees will eventually talk, and they will definitely talk because you're going to have a high rate of turnover as well. And once that happens, you've got a massive dose of bad publicity, a potential lawsuit on your hands, because if it's genuinely making employees like physically unsafe as a result of their mental health being negatively impacted from their workplace, they do actually have a case for a lawsuit in a lot of these cases. Your business will be in hot legal trouble, your public image will be shot to shreds, and you're probably looking at a bankrupt business, if I'm honest.
It's
Exactly.
also a point of it's also a point of conversation with a lot more employees nowadays. Before, it's a lot like mental health was seen as like a taboo kind of thing to talk about back then. And so it's really hard for some people to just kind of like talk to others about what's going on with them and what's with their head and what stuff like that. But nowadays, in like during the pandemic as well, it's being an increasingly like topic, like increasingly common topic with employees to talk about, since it's a lot of things that they've been struggling themselves as well as other people. That's why there's a lot more kind of openness when it comes to that kind of thing. A lot of people need to like with the way of trying to maintain that kind of like mental health, physical health. Sometimes you just have to like sit down, have a chat with your manager saying, this is what's happening to me right now. Like when Joanna said that she had the panic attack, you need to be more open with your with like co-workers to kind of make that bond with them so that they can understand what's going on with you. That's why like it's a lot more like you need that there should be like a law of like more focused on mental health and stuff like that, where employees like mental health and their safety should be prioritized, like and so that they can have like a happier workforce. That's why during the pandemic you see a lot of schedules where it's a lot more flexible for people to kind of work with, and a lot more people are going with a lot more like kind of like short gigs or like kind of like having like flexible work hours. That's why, and it kind of helps with their workflow as well. So you can sometimes just say, oh, I can't do this right now, maybe I'll do it later. Or you talk to the managers, I could do this for you right now if you want me to. If you keep that kind of bridge between the employees and employers, and trying to keep that mental health, like trying to maintain both their health and mental health, you could see a positivity coming up to them in terms of workloads. That's why mental health should be like a focus for a lot of employers. That way you can get happier employees and them like sticking to you throughout the years in your company.
Yeah, because that's the thing. If people are not happy, they leave. So then you have to pay extra to get new people in and train them again and do all of that. If you had the programs for mental health and any other programs your employees need, then you probably would stick with the one team you know. Because while I was working as a bartender, a lot of people come and left. So we didn't have a team that we knew besides managers. The managers would always stay, but people like me, like bartenders and waitresses, they would come and go. Like I would meet people because they would be there for a training shift, and then they either would never come back or they come back and like 3 weeks later they will leave. So I don't see, because they don't like the work environment, they don't like the way they do things around there. So it's like, why won't you listen to your employees telling you this is not working? This is probably the reason why people are leaving, instead of just let them leave and bring more people in and just keep doing that, because you're never gonna get that sense of family or if any bond of friendship, because people come and leave all the time. I don't even remember half of the names of the people that I used to work with, because it would be so many people coming in and out all the time that what's the point of you even learning their name? Because you're sure that you're not going to see them like the next time around you come to work, you know?
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking with like, I mean, we like here on OrderPin as well, like we have our own teams, like the blog team, that other video production, video blog team for the digital marketing. Like we all spread out evenly to different subsections of teams as well. But we wanted to kind of lead by example on this one. I think I talked about it before as well. You know, we've basically kind of what we did here was I kind of get everyone to turn on their webcams. It's like a way of like opening up to each other, one another. And I felt like this sense of uncomfortable nature, like no one is able to open up between one another. And luckily we managed to kind of like took off that pressure from each other. And we're now able to talk more openly and freely now. And even fairly to say we have our own kind of like, you know, group chat to talk about it, if you would say. And I think that kind of helped me as well be more comfortable with my peers as well as my colleagues. And I feel like in my state of mental health, I don't need to worry so much. I can rely upon them because I've met them, I talk to them, I've seen their faces. I feel like I could trust them. That I feel like trust is key. It comes along with mental health. Like you can't deny a person's mental health. You just got to simply say you do what you can to support them. it's like it's what you do, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, just to touch back on a point actually from previous that
Mhm.
Joanna mentioned about like for high staff turnover, not knowing people's names and such, like
Exactly.
this is even more disastrous in the current labour market actually, because right now it's a lot more. Whereas historically we've been slowly building to more of a kind of employer market in regards to labour. COVID came with like mass everyone leaving, having to leave their jobs, but that ultimately resulted in when things open back up again, we now have we have a complete like labor we have a complete lack of labor in the market, which means that now it's a lot more of a buyer's market for workers. Now and which is even worse now because if they know that you've got like a bad reputation for like mental health or whatever, they will skip your workplace right over. And if you have a high turnover, it's going to be even longer before you can replace that employee now. And you may lose any of your previous like loyal employees more and more as like the constant rotating kind of like flow of people coming in, realizing it's not a nice environment and then leaving ultimately puts some more work on them. They leave, and then kind of like you're just left with like no experienced employees left, and you have to spend an absurd amount basically training everyone from scratch because you don't have anyone else to deliver the training. I've got a friend who works in hospitality, and he used to work at like a coffee shop, and basically that process happened. He was like the experienced employee in that particular environment. They just kept replacing people, making him take more and more people's shifts. Eventually, he just had enough of it and left. And I think they now have like maybe one like actually experienced employee left. And if I had to guess, they'll probably leave at some point too.
Yeah, when the pandemic happened, a lot of people left the job I was at, so it became you were a bartender, a waitress, and a host all at the same time. So if you were in a bar, then you have to go out, host people, put them in the tables, take their order, go back to the bar, do their drinks, and constantly do that. So you're one person doing three people's jobs. At one point, I think it was a Sunday morning, my boss left to get something, so I was alone in the pub by myself with 5 tables. So I was a hostess, a waitress, and a bartender for 5 different tables. I was like, I can't do this. This is insane. This is 3 jobs. I'm by myself in the whole pub, and people keep coming in, and the other person who was coming in was coming in 2 hours. So I was by myself for 2 hours. So when they came in, they're like, "Are you by yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm kind of stressed. That I've been doing this for very like it's too many people. So they helped me out, and then my boss came in, and she asked me if I was okay, and I'm like, "No, no, it was too much." And then she took there's the one thing I will never forget. Because every time you serve someone, they can tip you either by card or just giving you money in hand. She went to the
Yeah.
table I was serving for 2 hours, and she took the tip, and she said, "Oh, they just tipped me £10." I was like, that was mine. I was with them for 2 hours. You just came in to like give them the bill and you took the £10. That's just insane to me that she did that. It still hurts. It still hurts my heart that she did that to me after like
Uh,
leaving me for
Isn't
two
there like
hours straight.
it
isn't there like
hurts.
there's gotta be a law that start. I remember there was like an article basically saying that employers can't take like they're gonna start a law by saying that employers can't take your tips, or is
Yes,
it's already being enforced now?
I mean, there was a law about that, meaning about restaurants cannot take the tips or anything like that from the employees or
Mhm.
something like that. I think that was trying to enforce because there were a bit of, say,
Yeah,
a lot of restaurants
yeah,
were
that
very
example.
mishandling. A lot of restaurants were mishandling the tips. In other restaurants, very mishandled tips, like either keeping it, the owner keeps it to themselves or anything like that. It's just some kind of law to help safeguard employees, because again, tips are also a form of like extra money to help support an employee's livelihood, and it helps support them, and it gives them that kind of peace of mind, easing them sort of. So I think that is something that is like an important law. I mean, an important like not law. I don't know if it's a law, but I think it's like a
It
bill.
should be a law
Yeah.
because I remember before the last one I was in, because I don't want to mention names just in case they see it. Um, we had a tip jar, and
Yeah.
our employer said, "Oh, we can use this for like a Christmas dinner or whatever, to go out for
Yeah.
drinks." So we didn't take the tips out since like November or like October. It was
Yeah.
there, and
Ah.
then that pub shut. So all that money that was ours, she kept it because the pub was shut
Yeah,
and
it's
we all
illegal.
were.
It's
Yeah,
it's illegal
there's a-
to
there's an-
take an employee's tips. Sorry, it's
We never seen it. None of us have seen that
yeah.
money ever again.
That's something that should never be happy because again,
It's our hard work.
it's
Even if
hard
it's like
work.
It's a new-
£3, it's still
There's new
something.
legislation for it.
There
Mm.
is legislation. It was around. I think it was very last year. It's like
It's
around
like October. It's like
no,
October.
September 2021. I remember they talked about this a lot because
Okay.
I remember
Oh,
I
this
was
happened in like 2019, you know, when like, or 2020 when we went on the second lockdown.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
that was that tiny period that we start working in, I think it was July
Yeah.
until
Mhm.
November.
Mhm.
Then when November hit and we came the second lockdown, that's when
But
our pub shut. And then reopened again, but I think it was just a scheme to get everyone out of that pub because none of us were happy because we had meetings with that manager and we were like, listen, none of us are happy, whatever. So when the pub shut, when the lockdown
Yeah.
happened, she kept the tips, closed up the pub, sold it to
Yeah.
someone else, and everyone that was working there was split into different
Mhm.
bars. So I just think they did it on purpose, to be honest, because now it's open, but
Yeah.
none of all my colleagues and friends that work there are there now because technically we
That
all
just
got
sounds-
fired
yeah,
and pushed to different pubs.
that just sounds
So
real
it was-
scummy.
It
I mean,
was.
it's a
Yeah.
it's a practice that is commonly happens in hospitality, but it's something that I think with the law that happened with around September 2021 with tips, I think this is like the beginning of improving the well-beings of employees, trying to back them up in these kind of laws and legislation to help support them in times, because again, like what we've seen through the pandemic as well on improving employee health and well-being is it's becoming more and more considered, and these are one of those many steps, like the banning of restaurants withholding any employee tips is like the beginning of something where it should help start safeguarding the employees, like almost like protection in a sense for them, like to be able to work safely, physically, mentally, and and let that be part of the health and safety acts. I mean, codes. I feel like employee health should be like the forefront, and I think flexibility and also involve on team building exercises, I think is another example would be trying to help bring that unity, like you said before. That way we don't have situations where that disconnect and like this kind of disgruntled like kind of attitude that is around everyone to go around everywhere and not create a toxic environment. We want to help everyone to be improved by both employers and employees together. Like we can't rely on one person alone. We all got to put our part into it, and I think that's something to help to, and raising concerns as well by the employees and acting upon them from their feedback. It would help not to get people to resign that much.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Another
and I
thing
think.
go on.
Sorry, go on. Okay. Well, I think like a lot of like this plays back into like a lot of that would play back into the trust thing we talked about earlier. If you're open and receptive to your employees initially when they talk about mental health concerns, complaints, and such like, then they're going to be way more likely to actually talk to you about these things after the fact, which reduces like the number of like disgruntled employees, mental health problems may be going on that you're not aware of, any toxic environment problems that may be contributing to such things that you're not aware of. So yes, being open, receptive, and have faith in your employees, I think, is key to making sure that they can kind of like approach you with these kinds of concerns, enabling you to act on them and improve your business. Sorry, go on, Daniel.
And another thing that businesses should start to think of like doing would be doing health screenings and stuff like that, making sure your employees' physical health is as maintained as well as their mental. Having them do mandatory screenings to make sure that as well as the pandemic saying that you have to do tests like regularly to show that you're not getting any infections or you're not getting it into the workforce. So having them do these mandatory screenings as well as just making sure that they don't have any underlying conditions or anything like that. It's just a great way of making sure that not only that your employees are getting the proper care that they need for that work, as well as making sure that other employees aren't affected by it. having those screenings and tests, as well as like the quick rapid tests that everyone has nowadays, to make sure that they don't get any kind of infection whatsoever, as well as the NHS app making sure to ping you if there was an infection nearby, or if there was a person that has an infection. So making sure you keep track of that when you're working especially working in something like hospitality, as being a bartender or as being a waitress, you have to make sure that your physical health is just as maintained as your mental one. Otherwise, it will just cause like a rapid infection all around, and it will just like cripple your workforce.
I mean, I can give you an example that legit just happened. I think 2 weeks ago, my best friend got sick with COVID, so she had to isolate. And a couple of days ago, her manager was asking her to go, but she was still like taking those tests, and it still came back positive, but she didn't have a fever. She wasn't coughing, but the test still came back positive, so technically she still had COVID. Her manager was saying that if she didn't have a fever and she was not coughing, by the way, my best friend is exempt, so she's not wearing a mask. So that's one less protection against spreading the virus. She was telling her to come in because she didn't have enough people, because her work, she's flexible, but 90% of the people aren't. So she's the only one that can take shifts when it's needed. So her managers was telling her, even though you have COVID, just come in because I don't have people in the store. And she was like, I'm not doing that. I still have COVID. Just because I don't have a fever doesn't mean I can't give it to someone else, especially because she doesn't wear a mask because she has asthma, I think. So it's like the employers are literally putting everyone else at risk because they don't have enough people, because they don't want to hire other people. So we're putting everyone else at risk because you yourself don't want to get someone else, just even if it's a part-time, for like once or twice a week, just to help out until everyone else can come back. So it's just insane that is still happening in 2022, like legit 2 weeks ago was happening to my best friend,
I mean, that's a concern itself, because when I returned to work at September for my hospitality job, we always encourage to make sure that we are testing continuously. We don't go into the job like on the day. We don't go in without a text saying you confirmed to be negative. Otherwise, you can't go into the shift. It's pretty much like a mandatory for health and safety reasons. And I think that's a practice that a lot of people should be focusing on. And that's something to take into consideration. And also having your physical health to be monitoring as well. Like that's kind of one of those measures that are being implemented. But also, especially with stress, I think stress is now becoming much more of a part that is working in together with both physical and mental health, because stress can lead to more physical debilitations or as mental debilitations. And I think to ease that off, there are always measures to counteract stress. And that's today, stress, even before COVID, stressful is almost like what can make or break a person, and typically can break a person to a worse state than they are.
Yeah, absolutely. You can kind of like manage your employee stress, or at least you can help manage it through a variety of ways. First of all, talk with them openly about their workflow. If an employee says their workflow is too much, they've got way too much work going on, try and cut that back if possible. If they're feel like they can't make deadlines, or they feel like they have to work on their time off, then they're just going to keep piling up on stress. They're never going to get any time to recover from it. It's going to pile up. They're going to get physical health problems like increased high blood pressure. They're going to possibly develop conditions like depression or anxiety, and at the end of it, you'll have an unhealthy employee, mentally or physically, who it's gonna feel terrible. And if you want to look at it from a cold and pragmatic perspective, it's also going to impact your business.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. If someone is unhappy, then the workload is going to fall on someone else, and it's just going to go down the drain until it hits the boss, and then he or she can't do anything about it because everyone before them is already stressed with either depression, anxiety. I was going to say a swear word, I caught myself. There's a lot So they have to focus on employees, because if they want their business to
Yeah.
actually run smoothly, you have to make sure everyone else is happy and is not stressed. Obviously, working in hospitality is stressful. No matter how happy you are, there's going to be incidents. But at least if you can contain it and help it out, then do
Yeah.
it, because it's not that hard, you know?
And I feel like as well, yeah, I think it's also like we want to make sure, yeah, like to ease off the stress. It's maybe like when it comes to like say weekends or say after working hours, especially nighttime, especially I think this is a common thing, like that is a habit of, is try not to keep late night messaging or anything like that from employees. Just if you have something, make sure you do it in the afternoon or to the morning. Never put in at nighttime to invoke stress onto employees. And I think that's a way of easing off the pressure. I think let them enjoy whatever time they have off work, let them do it enjoying, to rest themselves. I think to have a restful and almost a very fully alert staff is a way to
To
make,
keep a work-life balance. It's like a work-life
yes,
balance you have to keep
balance
for
is
them.
key, especially key in terms of like managing, your employee health. And trust me, if you look after your employees and make sure you support them all the way through, and I feel like that's a way for me to sum it up for this podcast, is by keeping your employees happy and healthy, and keep looking after them, because you're responsible for them. By keeping them safe, your business will be safe with them having your back always 100%. And I think that's the message for the podcast for today. Just keep everyone safe and keep looking out for them. And on that note, I think we've got about a few minutes to finish, I think. So probably going to end it off here. So yeah, I think this is about employee health. That was, episode 4 done.
You think?
That was a
Yeah.
cheerful one.
Yes. Yes.
Let's go.
Very, very Debbie Downer as well.
I don't know. I'm still trying to get used to being on camera and that, recording,
Yeah.
but yeah, well, we've got to keep going, isn't it? So I think this is the Hospitality Chat podcast. My name is Mehdi Rahman, Matthew Drummond-Poynter, Daniyal Khan, and Joanna Oliveira.